Okay, this podcast episode of mine is also available on Spotify. I just wanted to say that before I started here. Hi, this is Theodore Bola. Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Today I want to talk about dualism versus non-dualism. Are you a dualist without knowing it? You may be. If you believe that after we die, that there will be peaceful oblivion or a black void, or what many refer to as nothingness, or emptiness, or darkness, or anything that after death will be like resting in peace, or if you view death as something you find comfort in, like Ricky Gervais recently said that no matter how bad life gets, we should all remember that we can take comfort in death because then it'll all be over. This is actually a dualist view because it implies, whether Ricky realizes it or not, most of these types of dualists do not realize it. It implies that after we die, there will be a kind of experience of no experience, as philosopher Tom Clark put in his essay Death, Nothingness, and Subjectivity. I just have to point out the title here that you're seeing on this Anchor app. For some reason it says, "Are you a dualist without knowing it?" And then it says, "Atheists are." Actually, the title of this podcast, you can find it on Spotify, is "Are you a dualist without knowing it?" And it says materialistic atheists. Something along, I can't remember its full title right now, but something along the lines of a lot of them actually are that they don't know about it. Something along that sentiment there. But anyways, back to this. So the idea that after we die, there's going to be, a deprivation from all experience, that we will somehow have a persisting, endless black void. Like, if you shut your eyes right now, it'll just be like that, just black, and only somehow without any thought or anything like that. And so you have to ask yourself, who is the one looking at this blackness, this black void, or this nothingness, or abyss that some people call it? How is this darkness being perceived? If, as many people that believe they are non-dualists would profess, they would say, well, we cease to exist. But if you push them further, they'll say that they find comfort in this non-existence that they say they call nothingness or darkness, and so on. So they yes, they find comfort in it, seeing it as a sort of escape from the unpleasantness of consciousness, or whatever experiences consciousness may have to encounter during life. So I guess I should have explained the difference between non-dualism and dualism earlier, but I'll get into that right now. So a non-dualist believes that consciousness is a function of the brain, that the brain does consciousness. Right now, a brain is doing you, the self, or what you would refer to as I. Brain is performing consciousness right now. All these things are experiences. So you could say that the brain is causing or doing experience right now. Whether it is the experience of the self or consciousness or whatever other things the brain experiences. And it interprets signals and sensations and everything, and these are all experiences that the brain is causing to occur. So a non-dualist does not believe in souls, or that conscious experience can be divided from the brain. A brain must do consciousness. So a non-dualist typically does not believe in any sort of afterlives or anything like that, or anything that would require a soul or for consciousness to separate from the brain or the body. So non-dualists wouldn't believe in an outer body of experience, whereas a dualist would. So dualism is everything that a non-dualist is not, of course. They believe in souls, they believe consciousness survives death, brains are basically not required for consciousness to exist. They see consciousness as something that exists separate from the brain. So, as I said earlier, to imagine a black void after death, or what is also known as nothingness or eternal oblivion, or to find comfort in death because you see death as an escape from experience. Believe it or not, these are all dualist ideas. That you have to be a dualist if you believe that after you die, it'll be a black void or nothingness. If you push somebody far enough, you'll eventually find that when they say nothing happens after we die, well, first they'll probably say that, well, yeah, we cease to exist. Okay, but then what happens after that? And then they'll say nothing. And you'll say, oh, okay, so generic subjective continuity, which I explained in my last podcast episode. But they'll say, no, there's nothing, unless they understand generic subjective continuity, then they'll say, yeah, well, of course, that's the only thing that could happen after we die. But a dualist believes that you continue to experience your own subjective personal consciousness after death. Many atheists, materialists, etc., are unwittingly dualists because they see death as comforting, or some atheists fear the black void they believe will follow death. But how can someone like Ricky Gervais see death as comforting if he's a naturalistic or materialistic atheist? If you died right now and there are no souls, then it would not be a peaceful black void. No, you, the consciousness that's listening to this podcast right now, simply would no longer be being done by the brain that's doing it, this particular consciousness would no longer be one of the ones that are occurring. But we know that consciousness will be occurring via other brains, being done by other brains. The brains of everyone that didn't die after you died. The brains of all the living people and animals and whatever other sentient beings may exist elsewhere in the universe. All of those consciousnesses will be occurring. And so your death will not be followed by you floating around in a black void or nothingness forever, because the only experiences or consciousnesses that will be occurring then are the ones that are being done by the living brains. So death should not give anyone a sense of comfort, because death will be followed by a consciousness that's being done by a living brain, just as non-existence before birth was followed by a consciousness that's being done by a living brain. Let me say that again. Death should not give anyone a sense of comfort, because death will be followed by a consciousness that's being done by a living brain, just as non-existence before birth was followed by a consciousness that's being done by a living brain. This is where I take issue with David Benatar's version of antinatalism, because he suggests that not being born spares the unborn by allowing them to not deal with being conscious. But as I've pointed out, if it isn't this experience, this consciousness, then it'd be one of the experiences that are being done by one of the living brains right now. Those would be the only experiences or consciousnesses there are. So if you see death as an escape, you are mistaken. And you're actually a dualist, even though you're not aware that you are. There's nothing wrong with being a dualist, but that's something I will save for another podcast. So only experience is experienced. This is a fact, as much as it's a fact that you're hearing these words right now. So if you know anyone that exclaims death will be followed by nothingness, or is something that will be comfortable or comforting to look forward to, you can let them know that they're actually dualists, and you can share this podcast with them. Thank you for listening. Until next time.